When I was a teenager, I used to have this recurring nightmare where I was trapped inside my old school. I would aimlessly roam the dark hallways for what felt like months or even years, and sometimes I would hear music that was always just one room away, ever so elusive and intangible. I recently played a horror game that made me remember those teenage nightmares. It made me scared and miserable again, so thank you. Thank you, Detention. What a way to start a new year. Detention is a 2D horror adventure game developed by Taiwanese game developer Red Candle Games. It's a story about a teenage girl trapped inside a haunted high school. Now, I've never been a Taiwanese teenager except for that one time, but I can't deny that Detention resonated with me on a personal level. That is to say, it scared the living daylight out of me. See, Detention is very good at taking things away from you. I kept finding new safe havens, and Detention just kept taking them away. After a long hallway marathon of holding my breath and avoiding monsters, I finally reached a concert hall and sat down to play the piano. The piano strings danced across the darkness, and for a few seconds came harmony. And when I stood up, Detention rewarded me with a hellish jump scare that almost made me fall from my chair. When I tried to turn the lights on, Detention spawned a monster right beside the light switch. It kept taking and taking. Ray, the protagonist, usually moves fast and swiftly, but when we found ourselves in her father's bedroom, when I wanted to get out as quickly as possible, she slowed down to a crawl. At that moment, I felt like Alex from Clockwork Orange. I was not just observing, but also participating in this shadow play. My point of view was voyeuristic, always tucked away somehow outside the school, outside the classroom. I kept surviving, and Detention kept taking everything away from me. It was my teenage nightmare all over again, unfolding right before my eyes. I was helpless and alone, and yet I couldn't bring myself to close the game. I felt powerful and powerless at the same time. The school was mine to explore, the mystery, however bizarre, mine to unravel and piece together. And then something strange happened, and then the nightmare grew on me. The game was messing with my head, and I loved it. The dream, so beautiful, so thoughtfully constructed, became a safe haven, protecting me from the unavoidable reality. The story of Detention is remarkable and profound. It's a weird mixture of Fahrenheit, Dead Poets Society, and White Day out of all things. The game tends to overuse foreshadowing from time to time, but overall is a well-crafted story. At first I was afraid that it was going to be just another critique of a dystopian society, and believe me, we're fine with dystopian societies. From Half-Life 2 to Time Shift, you can wallpaper your house with dystopian societies and never run dry. But no, Detention is a personal and touching story about love, freedom, responsibilities, and everything else that Jean-Paul Sartre used to bang on about. And you can't pin the blame on anyone, since all the characters are both guilty and innocent at the same time. The story of Detention's development starts in 2015 when Coffee Yao and 5 other developers got together and started working on a new psychological horror game. Released in January 2017, Detention received positive reviews from critics and fans alike. Critics praised the game for successfully blending religious and thematic Eastern Asian references with the aspects of the modern age. The game was so successful that it spawned 1 novel, 1 movie, and 1 ongoing TV show, averaging a 6.4 on IMDb. Red Candle Games were already working on their new project, and the next game, Devotion, a first-person psychological horror, well, you had to stick to what you know, once again lived up to the expectations. The atmosphere and setting were pretty much the same, with the only difference being that my laptop couldn't run this one. As of 2021, Red Candle Games are working on a new title, Nine Souls, a Sekiro-inspired hand-drawn action-adventure that heavily focuses on not being Hollow Knight, I mean lore and action. Detention consists of 4 chapters and a prologue. The prologue is slow, methodical, and informative, while Chapter 4 is where everything goes batshit crazy. The game opens up with an establishing shot of a classroom. Our protagonist is Wei, the kid zoning out, while Miss Yin is talking about politics and history. We then see an elderly officer walking towards the classroom, and one of the students mutters, "Look, it's Instructor Bai." So this Bai guy enters the classroom and takes Miss Yin away. She tells the students to stay put as she'll be back shortly, but I know my social dystopias. This woman ain't coming back. As the screen fades to black, we get a glimpse into the process of interrogation. "Miss Yin," the text reads, "have you seen this list before?" The screen then fades back to the classroom. Wei slowly wakes up from his 1,000-year slumber and exits the room, only to find the school deserted due to an incoming typhoon. Around this time, I started feeling slight discomfort in my stomach. The holes and walls reeked of despair and isolation, and I couldn't put my finger on what was making me feel so empty and so scared. Wei eventually moseys his way into the auditorium where he meets Ray, the true protagonist of the game, and we can complete the limerick now. Ray and Wei are not okay. She's catatonic, he's kinda gay. Sorry. She appears to be sleeping on the chair, utterly clueless about how she even got there. Ray refuses to leave the school without her necklace, so Wei goes on a fetch quest to find her lost deer pendant. They exit the auditorium and head toward the main gate, but the bridge has collapsed and there's no other way across the Blood River. Wei, the stud that he is, suggests they wait out a storm inside the school. "Don't worry," he says, "it's just a typhoon. The school has enough supplies for us to get through the storm." "Alright," Ray replies, "I guess I can trust you." They run back into the classroom and Wei steps outside for a moment to grab some supplies. He then fades out of existence, and before you know it, Ray wakes up next to his hanging corpse. Detention is a 2D point-and-click side-scroller that focuses on lore and puzzle solving. The game's atmosphere is heavily influenced by Taiwanese folklore and mythology, and the gameplay involves solving riddles and navigating through the school's haunted corridors. The player is given a journal with memos, documents, and instructions. For example, this is a page from a famous children's novel called Eternal Damnation. The gameplay is bound to like 2 buttons. You press the left mouse button to walk and the right mouse button to hold your breath. Yeah, holding your breath is the thing now. It's like Death Stranding, just without death, because there's a checkpoint system. Detention is very safe and immersion-breakingly accessible. There's no real sense of danger. When you die, you just go to the most recent checkpoint. It would have been more convenient if the developers had made a death penalty system like in Senua. Die one too many times and your save files will get deleted. Horror is only good when you tend to lose something. Make us pay for our mistakes. Make the player spontaneously combust or something, I don't know. The monsters in this game are called Lingered. There are 3 types of Lingered. Basic Lingered are shadowy silhouettes that resemble young girls with mouths wide open and spines that bend backward when they run. You can easily avoid them by holding your breath or distracting them with food offerings. Lantern Spectres are tall humanoid ghosts with tentacle-like appendages on their faces. They are creepy at first, but they tend to get annoying. You have to perform an entire hookah dance to avoid them. Face away, hold your breath, walk backward, exhale, and bite down on the controller. And then there's this horrible mass of human arms. It usually enters the room, shrieks, refuses to elaborate further, and then leaves. However scary and bizarre, the monsters aren't really that important. The story is what makes the game utterly terrifying. And it's more than a simple social commentary. You can certainly feel the oppression, but the focus isn't on the regime. The regime is just scenery. This tragic story would play out the same way no matter the dominant ideology. It's a story about a young girl who didn't understand the consequences of her actions. By following her own heart, Ray had denied other people their freedom. She had caused so much pain, so much suffering, and yet still you cannot blame her. I couldn't bring myself to blame her. And that's the thing about oppressive ideologies. They feed on sadness and despair. If there weren't any cogs, the machine would stop running. It's that simple. And that's where the similarities between Detention and my nightmares end. Detention is a sharp and brilliant commentary on guilt and hopelessness. My nightmares were an aimless adventure into the unknown, crafted by my teenage mind while I was struggling with everyday problems. Unlike many AAA games, Detention doesn't feel bloated. It is precisely what it wants to be, down to the last detail. Nothing more, nothing less. And I applaud Red Candle Games for having the balls to tell such a unique and intriguing story. Yeah, I loathed the stealth sections, and Detention's obsession with handholding often ended up breaking the immersion and pulling me out of the game world. It messed me up. It made me remember my teenage years and reminded me of my nightmares. Life sure is simpler when you're young. No bills, no deadlines, and no responsibilities, but take that with a grain of salt. Ray's lack of accountability and no critical thinking is what led to this outcome. And this is why Detention is a masterclass in storytelling. All the characters are both right and wrong. They are free and freedomless at the same time. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year.